I don't know where that portal took him, but I know that Lucky is still out there, somewhere within the book. My name is Lyra Swifttail, and I'm the current head of what remains of the Guardian Order. But this isn't my story. This is Lucky's tale. It started with the destruction of our home. In a mad grasp for power, the sorcerer Jinx betrayed his friends and tried to steal our most powerful artifact, the Book of Ages.
Well, this is certainly an unexpected way to open a game like this. You come into this game expecting all sunshine and rainbows, and while for the most part it is, this opening sets a much darker mood than you'd expect. Some may call that tonal whiplash, but I prefer a successful subversion of expectations. Now that we jumped into the game proper, how does it control? Pretty well if I do say so myself. While the movement speed is a bit slower than I prefer, you get used to it over time, and every one of Lucky's abilities from his jumping to his tail swipe to his burrow are all really smooth and responsive. You can do some neat tricks like chaining together burrows and jumping into a burrow, and if you try to burrow on hard terrain, Lucky does this slide instead that's really good for extra movement. Good controls all around. And even better are the game's graphics and art style. The moment I saw it in action, my brain immediately thought of Skylanders in all the best ways. It's not overly detailed, but it's just detailed enough to where the blocky and cartoony look of the world feels very charming, and the performance, at least on the Xbox Series X, is buttery smooth with rarely any noticeable hiccups. What else can I say? You can see for yourselves how good this game looks. Now, as for the first level of the game, Heavy Heads, it acts as both a tutorial for your abilities and the start of your journey, and it does its job pretty okay. It's a bit too simple to the point where you kinda have to try to fail at it, but this game clearly has a different target demographic in mind. Plus, you don't want to start out with the tough stuff from the get-go, right, FromSoft? No 3D platformer is complete without collectibles, and New Super Lucky's Tale has 4 per level. They're specifically pages for the Book of Ages, but you get each of them in different ways. One for completing the stage normally, one for finding a hidden area or completing a hidden challenge, one for getting 300 coins before reaching the end of the level, and one for collecting all the letters that spell out L-U-C-K-Y. Simple stuff that starts out just as simple, but the game does a lot with the little, as each one is fun to find and can sometimes be a bit tricky to sniff out. Good stuff. One thing I like about Jinx and the kitty litter is that they're an ever-present threat and fully fleshed out. They appear both in the hub worlds and several levels to antagonize you, and they each have their own distinguished personalities. Master Mittens is the martial artist with such a big head that he considers himself the hero of his own story. Tess the Tinker is the brains that's all numbers and no emotions, besides being explosively angry, and I do mean that literally. General Buttons and Lieutenant Fluffenstuff are twins despite looking nothing alike, and one is the loud and proud type in every way except height, while the other is big, dumb, and doesn't talk much. Lady Meowmalade is the pop star with an ego that's somehow louder than everyone else's, and Jinx is one part evil overlord and another part loving father, weirdly enough. At least when you talk to him in his golem form hiding in the hub worlds. They might not be the most threatening bunch ever, but they're certainly entertaining and well developed for what they are. Speaking of hub worlds, while they aren't too big, they're a cute interlude in between levels. In addition to talking to any NPCs you find along the way, you can complete special puzzles, which I'll talk about later, and use coins collected from levels to buy outfits for Lucky, and he looks adorable in every one. Also, as I mentioned earlier, Jinx is here in his not subtle at all golem disguise, and he has some dialogue that shows how he feels about each of his kids. Again, not the greatest things ever, but it's cute nonetheless. One small detail I like is that the hints and tips on the loading screen aren't just for hints and tips. Occasionally there'll be remarks from Greg the male golem about how you're his best buddy, tidbits about Jinx and the kitty litter, and even mention of Lucky having a brother named Lucas. It's not story relevant or anything, but it's flavor text that's nice to see. Next level is the Aqueducts, and it's a 2D stage rather than the usual 3D one. The platforming is pretty standard throughout, though the rotating platforms with spikes on the other side can be a little tricky, and I like how you constantly see Mittens at various points as if he's tracking your every move as you go. Simple, but effective. As I alluded to earlier, there's a couple challenges you can find in the hub world of each world, and the first of these are sliding piece puzzles that require you to position Lucky statues in the correct places amongst Jinx statues. I won't sugarcoat it, these puzzles are bad, and it's a weird kind of bad too. For most of the game, these puzzles are stupidly easy. So easy, in fact, you can blaze through them in a few seconds without much thought. And while the chill music is nice, the puzzles just amount to a boring distraction. Until you get to the 4th world. Then the puzzles go from way too easy to maddeningly difficult for no reason. Legit, I spent 10 to 20 minutes on each one of these puzzles trying to figure out what the hell the game wanted me to do, and eventually it got so frustrating that I had to resort to a guide to give me the answers to some of them. A part of me does appreciate the attempt at a harder challenge, but the pendulum swung way too far in the other direction. It shouldn't be easy stuff for most of the game only to sucker punch you at the end. There should be a gradual increase over the course of the game. And this is not that, Chief. Dungeon Run is the next level, and it's one of a couple 2D auto runner levels. That's right, this game has auto runner levels, and it is easily the weakest type of level in the game for a couple reasons. While I praised the controls before, they feel so much clunkier when you're constantly running, and it seems like Lucky runs ever so slightly faster in these stages than he does normally, because the timing with your jumps and burrows feels increasingly strict. Frankly, your movement speed feels more like a weird no man's land of being too fast and too slow at the same time. It's not fast enough to really get the adrenaline rush you would want from these stages, but it's not slow enough for the timing to feel good when you nail your jumps and burrows. I won't be going over every single auto runner level since for me they all kind of blend together, but rest assured they all share the same problems as each other. In fact, these levels highlight another issue with this game, and I have no idea how this was overlooked. There is no option to restart levels while you're in them. I'm serious, I scoured the pause menu for it, and it's just not there, which means if you want to restart a level for one reason or another, you have to either finish the level you're in and re-enter from the hub world, or back out to the hub world and re-enter the level from there. Might not seem like a big deal at first, but when the auto runner levels give you as much grief as they did for me, the amount of times you'll be trying to restart begin to pile up. This game hasn't been patched since release either, so it's unlikely to get that fixed anytime soon. Go Fetch is the next level, and it's pretty interesting. You'll be carrying Giovanni's head throughout most of it, which means you can't jump, and while the level is designed around it, it's still quite perilous and requires quick thinking to avoid the fireballs and avoid falling into the lava below. Partway through, Giovanni's flaming dog will start chasing you too, and that can further heat things up. Eh? Get it?
I'm not repeating the pun off.
Lame. Anyways, the rest of it is a little lacking since it's more of the same, but I appreciate the twist added here enough to give it a win. Okay, it's finally time to fight Mittens, and he's kinda lame? Like, I know he's the first boss, but even by first boss standards, Mittens is really lacking. Despite being a self-proclaimed Mushu master, Mittens doesn't fight you himself at any point. Instead, he just sends his hypnotized golems at you, which are really easy to kill, and uses traps to shoot fireballs at you. And once you survive enough of these, it's just a matter of hitting enough golem heads at him before he takes a tumble. All that self-aggrandizement only to fight and go out like a chump. And while it kinda works from a character standpoint, it doesn't exactly make a good first impression for the bosses of this game. Since you can play any level in pretty much any order you want, I might be jumping all over the place in terms of typical level orders here. Case in point, the first level of Veggie Village that we'll be discussing is the Harvest Festival. You gotta get the band called the Soggy Boggy Boys together to put on a song for the festival, and they're split up in 3 sections that demand different things from you. One requires constant burrowing to not get spotted, one is some decent platforming with bouncing tomatoes as you collect 7 fireflies, and one is more puzzle focused with trying to get a key up to a door. It's actually pretty fun to do all these, and I'm glad they made sure to make each section feel unique from each other. Also, the worm NPCs constantly make food puns, and the song the Soggy Boggy Boys sing, while mostly indiscernible in terms of lyrics, is a decent bop in terms of tune. Remember that other type of puzzle I mentioned was in the hub world? Well, it's these marble puzzles where you gotta roll around in a maze collecting every coin in it to get out. And they're not the greatest things ever. They're fine enough distractions, I guess, but that's all they ever amount to. Distractions. They don't dare to challenge you in a lot of ways, and they mostly feel like a heavily watered down Super Monkey Ball stage. There's at least a more consistent increase in difficulty over time, but even so, I'd rather waste my time with Monkey Ball instead. At least those games are fun distractions. Pungent Pass is the next level on the docket, and it's a maze filled with traps and 6 rabbits that need freeing from their cages. It actually requires a fair bit of thinking in order to get through, thanks to the switches that rotate the walls, and the rabbits you free are decently humorous with their quips, though the one that went on really long about being free wasn't nearly as funny as the devs thought it was. I'm not usually too big on mazes, at least in video games, but this one's not half bad, all things considered. Egg Roll is up next, and Tess has appeared to scramble the chickens until they're supersized, poach them until they're scattered, and otherwise fry anything she can get her hands on in the name of science. You'll be undoing her work by cracking the shells of her machines in multiple ways, as well as rounding up some chicks and chickens so they don't boil themselves in the confusion. Not excellent by any means, but at its yolk, you'll enjoy yourself well enough.
I don't know if my indulgence in your last pun sprees flipped a switch in your brain, but if it did, I'll take note and never do it again.
Come on, you're smiling. I can see it white as day.
It's a pity smile. Now shut up and continue your damn vid already.
Just give it time. You'll be sunny side up eventually. Anyways, we got Ripe Rollers up next, and it gives me Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze vibes, at least regarding that one roll with all the fruit. You'll be jumping across the water wheels, bouncing on the fruit, and dodging the spike fruit in this 2D level, and it's pretty fun to do. Some of the collectibles can be a little obtuse in their solutions, but that's ultimately a nitpick. The rest of the level, while a bit derivative, is fun enough to play and look at to where I don't care. As opposed to Piggy Peril, where I straight up forgot about it until writing this script. Take everything I said about Ripe Rollers and replace it with gears, buzzsaws, and a factory setting, as well as make it nowhere near as interesting to talk about. Now, it's not all bad. The little bit towards the end with you hopping between the background and foreground is a little neat, but the rest of it is just so unmemorable that I can't be bothered to talk about it. Easily the lesser 2D stage of this world. Lucky for us, Tess is able to pick up the slack with her insect mech Petunia, and put up a much better fight than Mittens did. As she pilots the mech, she'll ram you headfirst with her buzzsaw mouth, fire lasers and fireballs at you, summon the occasional enemies, and attempt to stab you with the legs of the mech. To beat her, you just gotta hit all the levers when they appear, and that causes a chain reaction that sends an electric blast at Tess. 3 of these in total are enough to take her down, and while it's not tough by any means, it's just hectic enough to feel like a proper fight. Take notes from your sister, Mittens. This is how you try to kill a hero. Something funny about the Wrestle Retreat world is that it's filled with all sorts of wrestling-themed objects and attire, but the Yetis that used to be wrestlers have retired and tried to turn it into a relaxation spot meant to help people find inner peace. It's such an oxymoron, and the world runs all the way with it, which makes me laugh. Especially since the Yetis still yell as wrestlers would, but about relaxation and inner peace and stuff. And further compounding this oxymoron is Crawl, Walk, Run, the next auto runner level. Now, my issues with the auto runner levels aside, it's supposed to be a course to help you become a valued member of society, but the way it does so is by making you run on conveyor belts and dodging freaking saw blades. I don't think finding my purpose was supposed to be this hardcore, but I can laugh so long as I'm not shredded. Eightfold Path is next, and it actually provides a moderate challenge. It's a platforming-focused level with platforms that fold over at certain points, and rotating blocks, too, both of which have spikes on certain sides of them, and they remind me a bit of Super Mario 3D Land. It's nothing major if you know 3D platformers, but it's nice that they're starting to amp things up a bit. Okay, you know what? Never mind what I said about Ripe Rollers. Melon Madness is the level that reminds me of DKC Tropical Freeze, and all in a good way, too. You'll be jumping and burrowing across giant watermelons to avoid a bunch of buzzsaws, and you'll even ride one rolling through the watermelon juice towards the end. It's also a very vibrant and colorful stage, despite me not really liking the fruit featured here. Hey, don't get on my case, sport. Not everyone likes the same fruit as others. Next level is Peaceful Place, except it's not actually peaceful at all. It's a giant death course filled with spikes, platforms suspended over lava, a rotating corridor filled with both, and even a rising arena to cap it off. Makes me wonder how much reconstruction the Yetis actually cared to do. Even General Buttons comments on it, so it's good for a level and for a laugh. Up next is Ladder Match of the Mind, and it's just a straightforward climb to the top with a couple gimmicks here and there. Namely, you have to hit these switches mid-air as you leap from one platform to the next, in addition to the typical bouncy and rotating platforms. Short, sweet, and to the point, that's easily the most relaxing level in the world. Not like that's saying much considering the other levels, but I'll take what I can get. Looks like it's time to finally fight off General Buttons and Lieutenant Fluffenstuff, and while they aren't as good as Tess was, they still provide a decent fight. It largely consists of Fluffenstuff attempting to squash you, shooting rows of green fireballs for a bit, and firing bombs at you, and said bombs can also take out some of the platforms that they explode. All you gotta do is hit the bombs back at them upon their firing, and you'll be home free with a couple chuckles from the fireball spelling out lucky smells at one point, and Buttons just accepting his fate and going down with the ship upon defeat. Again, not better than Tess, but still good enough to gain a win. There's an achievement for destroying a sandcastle in Gilly's Island, and it just says, monster. Equal parts funny and fitting. That aside, we got 3 Cannon Salute up first, and Buttons and Fluffenstuff have come back for round 2. They'll be firing bombs at you from their ship, and you gotta make sure to not only dodge them, but also direct their bombs towards explosive barrels to open the path forward. Man, the Donkey Kong influence is strong with this one. Easy enough to understand and equally easy enough to survive, and you get an achievement for not getting hit by the bombs at the end of the stage, too. Not for the whole stage, weirdly enough, but I don't make the rules. Next level is Trapped in Paradise, and it's another maze level with a couple additions. There's color-coded switches that turn gates of the same color when hit, and the same applies to some platforms that can be rotated. Throw in some extra platforming in some parts, and an achievement for not using any of the levers, which requires a great deal of parkour to get, and you got yourself a pretty good upgrade to the previous maze level. Securing the Talent is next, and it's all about freeing some guests from Meow Malade's hypnotic beats. Just platform across the tiny islands, maybe solve a puzzle here or there, and smack the speakers to destroy them and allow the guests to take a break from dancing. There's even a hidden reference to the original Donkey Kong arcade game in this level. Why? No other reason than the devs really like Donkey Kong, apparently. I can't say I blame him. The big ape's iconic for a reason. At last, we reached my favorite boss fight in the game, Lady Meowmalade. True to her pop star nature, she brings all the style and funky beats to her fights. The main gimmick is the dance floor becoming hazardous with only a select area being safe, and each safe area gets progressively smaller as the fight goes on. In addition to backup dancers getting in your way, Lady Meowmalade herself will get on the disco ball and fire lasers in a circle, with each phase adding more lasers and making the floor hazardous during the laser portion too. If you can outlast it all, you'll be able to damage her once the lasers burn out, and it only takes 3 turns for the diva to dip out. It's a really cool fight with some additional challenge from an achievement that requires not taking damage at all during the fight, and as I said, the music is really funky, especially when the lyrics kick in at certain points. For a bit of quick context, Hauntingham is the last world in the main game, and as such, the only one that forces you to play the levels in a set order, which is understandable for a final world. I bring this up because the first level is Carnival Court, which is exactly what it says it is, a spooky carnival filled with all sorts of games that you'll need to play to earn tickets to complete the level. Said games consist of racing a chicken, bouncing on bumper cars, testing your strength, pouncing on targets, and shooting at targets, and they're all a fun time in their own ways. You'll even be doing other stuff like platforming on a deadly Ferris wheel, returning a crystal ball to a fortune teller, and surviving Jinx's arena disguised as one of the games. Probably wouldn't fly as a carnival in the real world, but for this one, it's a spooktacular experience that's just a fun time. After a night at the carnival, you board the terror train, and even though this game technically came out before it, the level takes me back to Cuphead's Phantom Express. The vibes are fittingly spooky, and the train itself is filled with obstacles that are fun to traverse as you head towards the back. Add in the eerie yet soothing music, and you got yourself the perfect ride on a dark, not stormy at all night. Grave Awakening is the last challenge before the final boss, ignoring the auto-runner levels I mentioned earlier, and it's a pretty good send-off. Its central gimmick involves normally invisible platforms only appearing via a lantern, and that makes for very interesting platforming sections. Things start out simple with just a path to follow, but then it adds in moving invisible platforms coupled with enemies to defeat. There's also a couple puzzles involving lighting up gravestones in a certain order, and lighting up a few mushrooms. Not the greatest final level by any means, but for the relatively low skill ceiling this game is set up throughout, it does its job pretty well. At last, we finally get to fight Jinx, who snatches the Book of Ages from Lucky via an illusion of Lyra, and now seeks to rewrite history with the tome. Does he prove why he's the leader of the kitty litter and a threat to every reality within the book? Well, not really, no. If anything, he's kind of a letdown of a final boss that gets shown up by all his kids, except Mittens. To give him a little credit, he has a fair amount of cool stuff like magic shockwaves, eye lasers, moving the cube platform around, and summoning ghosts, but they're all really easy to deal with. Plus, once you take out the ghost, Jinx is vulnerable to be jumped on a couple times before the cycle repeats itself. And the only major difference is that Jinx will make clones that can also fire shockwaves in the last round. All this would be fine as a first phase of a multi-phase final boss, but this is literally all he has to offer. The same simplistic stuff you've had for most of the game. Sure, sometimes simplistic final bosses can work, but this is not one of those times. Instead of being a true test of the skills you've learned throughout the game, Jinx just feels underwhelming, and considering he's the follow-up to Lady Meowmalade's great boss fight, that hurts all the more. Anyways, after the credits is post-game in Foxington, where Lucky must undergo the Guardian trials to become a true Guardian, and also do any extra cleanup you might need after the main game. One of these trials includes the penultimate Warriors combat trials, which include 2 harder versions of Tess and Buttons, and a 4-round gauntlet of enemies. But while the latter is fine on its own, the former confuses me. Don't get me wrong, I like the additions made to both fights, it's just, why only Tess and Buttons? Why not include the other bosses as well? Maybe not Jinx since he's the final boss after all, but Mittens and Meowmalade could have absolutely been involved, especially since the former could have used the improvements. It just feels like an odd choice to only make harder versions of Tess and Buttons and leave the rest out to dry. A Hat in Time did this way better with its harder bosses. What's your excuse? Luckily, Chip's challenges are worthy of being part of the trials. If you thought the platforming in this game was really easy, these levels are the challenge you'll be asking for, and they don't hold much back. Sure, it's not on the same level as something like Super Meat Boy or Celeste, but each one of these platforming challenges is sure to test you plenty and kick your ass if you aren't prepared. A couple of them even go beyond just platforming and do stuff like force you to burrow for almost the entire level and keep up with a ghost as they light the way for invisible platforms. I very much appreciate this challenge, and while a couple of the achievements involved are a bit excessive, I still love the experience of completing them. It's a shame Annalyd's ball rolling puzzles don't quite hit the same. To her credit, these ones are more elaborate than Tessa's ball rolling puzzles, but I'm still not very enthused when playing them. It's still the same roll around and collect every coin shtick with little that makes things interesting, and it just goes to show that simply having more doesn't automatically make it better. Once again, I'll just stick with Monkey Ball.
Hey, Jinx. It's been a while. Need a ride?
Oh! I guess that tip about Lucky having a brother wasn't just a fun fact. Cool sequel bait, guys.
What do you mean it's been 5 years and we've heard nothing?
And that's New Super Lucky's Tale. If I could describe this game in one word, it would be cozy. It's not trying to tell an artistically rich story or challenge the player immensely on their skills as a gamer or reinvent any mechanics. It's just a good old-fashioned 3D platformer with heavy Donkey Kong influence and whose only desire is to let you have fun. And despite some glaring issues here and there, I'd say I did have fun. Not so much fun that I'd say it's amazing or great, but enough that I can see it being a fun comfort game and a good introduction for younger gamers that want to start playing 3D platformers. I probably won't return to it anytime soon, but hey, maybe someday if I ever felt like it, it can make a good live stream. With that said, that's going to do it for today's video, and I hope you enjoyed what I had to say. The next video is going to be the start of a brand new series on my channel, and this one's versus related. You know all those videos you see around of people talking about different matchups and who they think wins? Well, this time, it's my turn. See you next time, everybody!